Hi everyone! So today I'm using question 11 on the 2019 TSA paper to talk you through how to avoid the indicator word trap that's sometimes present in the wordy argument questions that we get on the Oxford TSA paper. So let's take a look at our question. If you'd like to, you can pause the video now and see if you can do it yourself. We've got 50 minutes for 90 questions on these papers, so 1.8 minutes per question, which I like to round down to 90 seconds a question, just to make sure you leave yourself enough time for everything. So if you want to, set a timer on your phone for 90 seconds and give it a go. Otherwise, I'll move straight on. So let's just do a quick recap first. In an argument, we have premises, so I'll mark with a P. We might have a sub-conclusion, and premises are building blocks that altogether lead us to the conclusion. If you've already done some research on these type of questions, you might know that therefore and so are indicator words that often indicate a conclusion. We can see that in a really simple sentence like, if it's raining, then the ground is wet. The ground isn't wet, therefore it isn't raining. So two premises and a conclusion, which in that case was helpfully indicated by the word therefore. But as you've seen in the title, the key lesson that I want to bring home to you today is that you can't trust indicator words. So highlight them or circle them as you read through the paragraph, definitely notice them, but be aware that they won't bring you to the conclusion every time. So let's look at question 11 here. The last sentence contains a therefore, but this is actually a sub-conclusion, which might seem weird because it's at the end, right? But these paragraph questions don't always follow a neat structure like premise 1, premise 2, sub-conclusion 1, premise 3, conclusion. So we have all these elements here, but they're not in this order. So if we go through and highlight the different sections, then we can see what sort of structure we actually have. So these first two are premises, so this is a premise and this is a premise. We do green for our conclusion, which is in the middle this time. Then we get one more premise, and the last one is a sub-conclusion. So a sub-conclusion is a sort of premise. It's also used as an argument to support the main conclusion, and that's what's really key here, that we're looking for the main conclusion, and there will only be one main conclusion in each of these arguments, regardless if they're a sub-conclusion. So knowing that, if you've identified the middle sentence as a contender, and maybe you've identified the end sentence as a contender because it has this therefore, maybe that's sort of tricked you a little bit. So a good way to test which is our overall conclusion is to add in your own indicator words. So if we scroll down a bit, I've written out these two sentences a bit more clearly. So schools should offer non-competitive physical activities as an alternative to traditional games lessons, and introducing alternative physical activities that are attractive for less competitive adults is an important part of preparing students for life after school. So let's say that you've identified these two as possible contenders, but you're not sure which one between them is the conclusion and which one is a premise or sub-conclusion. So a great way to test this is adding in our own indicator words. So let's try it this way around first. Because schools should offer non-competitive physical activities as an alternative to traditional games lessons, therefore, introducing alternative physical activities that are attractive for less competitive adults is an important part of preparing students for life after school. Now let's test it the other way around and compare them to see which sounds better. Because introducing alternative physical activities that are attractive for less competitive adults is an important part of preparing students for life after school, therefore, schools should offer non-competitive physical activities as an alternative to traditional games lessons. Okay, so this second formulation hopefully sounds more right to you because this first sentence is our sub-conclusion, a type of premise, meaning that we can use because as an indicator word and it still sounds right next to this second sentence. And then this second sentence here is our conclusion. So premise, i.e. subconclusion, in this case subconclusion, and conclusion. But don't be worried if you thought that this first formulation here didn't seem immediately totally wrong, because the TSA isn't about absolutes, it's about comparing between two answers. There isn't one right answer here and 4 wrong answers. There is one best answer, which hopefully now you've identified as D, and then there are 4 less good answers, and that's specified here in the question to us, which of the following best expresses the main conclusion of the above argument. It's not asking for the main conclusion, it's saying what's the best of these 5 options. So hopefully when we compared the 2 formulations here, this second one sounded more right to you. So I'm using this question to do an in-depth dive, that's why we haven't looked at the 5 answer options yet, but when you're doing this in the exam, what I'd advise you to do is to read through the paragraph quickly, mark any passages that you think are key and could be the conclusion, and then read the answer options A to E, cross out any ones you're pretty sure aren't right, or circle any you think could be contenders, and then read through the paragraph again. From my experience, that's the best use of your time. So I can do a sort of run through of what my initial thinking was when I first looked at this question. So I've done my read through of the paragraph, and now I'm looking at the answer options. So I crossed out A because it didn't feel quite right, it's too broad and it doesn't mention anything about sport. Then I crossed out B because it felt a lot like a premise and there's no mention of schools, which I thought was a really important part of the text. Then I crossed out C because this also felt like a premise to me, and D felt pretty good, so I circled this one. I also thought E could be an option, so I did a little squiggle by it, which is my code for possibly the answer, a possible contender. Then I read back through the paragraph and I realised that E is too broad because it doesn't mention anything about non-competitive sport, which I think is the key thrust of the argument, and this paragraph is all about why non-competitive sports are important. So I've crossed out E, and D is what's gone down on my answer sheet. So if you were taken in by that misleading therefore indicator word, which is indicating our subconclusion, a type of premise, I'm going to keep saying it until it's stuck in your head rather than our conclusion, then there's a chance you were taken in by A here, because as a phrase it looks really quite similar to this language that comes after our therefore. So the key lesson is that you don't have much time on the TSA paper. You've got 90 seconds a question, but just don't use indicator words as a shortcut because it won't necessarily bring you to the right answer. They are there for a reason, but as we've seen here, it could be a subconclusion, which is a type of premise. So don't see therefore and think, boom, got it, on to the next question. So instead, we need to go through the process of reading the paragraph, then go through the multiple choice options, and then read the paragraph again. And if you're really stuck between 2 options, do our test of pitting them against each other by adding in our own indicator words, because and therefore. So if you're stuck between D and any of the other answer options, you do our because, therefore test, and you'll see that it only ever works if D is the conclusion. So if you put these A, D, B, D, C, D, E, D, it all only works that way round. It never works the other way around because D has to go with therefore, because that's our best conclusion, it's our best fit. Okay, I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, including trouble you're having with any particular question on whatever the paper is, just leave a comment and I'll try to help. Check out my past paper walkthrough videos that are on my channel, but please try doing the past paper first before you watch them. That's the best way to learn. There's only a limited number of past papers, so use this wisely in your revision.